We've got about 250 people or individuals attending this specific CESA DBSA orientation briefing. So I think before we start, I think what we want to do is just highlight, firstly, my name is Cribs Modley. I'm a member of the Advocacy Committee of CESA, which is the Consulting Engineers of South Africa, and I'm going to be your facilitator for the next hour and a half. Okay. So the main objective of this specific briefing session is to orientate our members regarding DBSA, and more importantly, is giving you a bit more information on orientating you in terms of what they do and what are the potential opportunities for members within the consulting environment moving forward. Okay. We got the caption, understanding your infrastructure value chain. I must highlight what it's not. So if you've got any specific contractual issues with DBSA, we're not going to actually field those questions. Those questions would have to go to your independent contractual arrangement with DBSA. So please, I think just bear that in mind. It's more an orientation, it's more an informative session so you can understand what are they offer, and more importantly, some of the opportunities in which sectors moving forward. So before we start, I just want to outline a few protocols in order for us to manage this process moving forward. So firstly, I would suggest that everyone puts their screens off, their videos off. And the reason for that is bandwidth across the board. But more importantly is we don't want to distract anyone that's presenting as well. The second protocol I think we should look at is that if everyone could mute themselves, that would be helpful so that we actually pay attention to what's being presented and not listening to what you basically, mulling over the mic as an example. The second protocol that we want you just to take note of, we are going to address questions and answers, and we're going to allow some time after the presentations to do that. There's two avenues that you're going to be requested to provide questions. Firstly, we're going to take 5 questions of people raising their hands. We want to ask you to keep it to a maximum of 2 minutes or less, based on the question that you want to present. And we are going to take 5 questions that will be written in the chat box moving forward. Okay. So I think just to kickstart, there's been a slight change to the initial invitation that went out. So what we're going to look at is the introduction that I'm taking you through now. Then we're going to have a welcome note from our CEO of CESA, Chris Campbell. Then we're going to have 2 representatives from DBSA. Luanda Matlata will focus on the DBSA focus sector. Sorry? Okay. Product offering. And then we're going to have the infrastructure delivery done by Don Pizzo, who is a business development specialist there. And then we're going to go through the questions and answers, and we're going to have closing remarks moving forward. Okay, I'm not sure who shouted that out, but can I ask you to be patient with us going through this? So firstly, let's start off by introducing Luanda Matlala. So his current position at DBSA is a client coverage, looking at energy, environmental, and ICT. He's been with the DBSA for, I think, just over a year now, if memory serves me right, or just less than that. And he's going to take us through a presentation dealing with the focus sectors and product offering. Luanda, if I can just ask you to please share your screen so we can go through your presentation. Oh, sorry, apologies, I'm missing one thing. Sorry, Chris, can I ask you to go first, just to introduce CESA as a whole and just providing a welcoming remark on that? Apologies, I missed that one.
Yeah, thank you, Cribs, and Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this webinar hosted between CESA and DBSA. I think, I would like to just briefly take the opportunity to just share with you one slide which tries to outline all of the things that we do at CESA, what it means to our members and what it means to yourselves as potential clients of our members. So let me, without further ado, do that. And if you have a look at this is generally this CESA as an industry association. For those of you who may not be aware of who we are and what we're all about, 580 member firms. That's it grows and it vacillates between 580 and 600. A huge amount of employees, and we have a countrywide footprint. And what we do is advocacy. We do lots of knowledge sharing. In fact, this is one of those interventions where there are queries or questions on interpretations, not contractual disputes, but interpretations. We offer that advice to client bodies. We have a strong focus on transformation and development, and we take transformation in its broad context, related both to gender diversity as well as technology and its impact on the industry. Market intelligence and capacity building, which in essence is our training intervention. We have a very vibrant School of Consulting Engineering that offers a huge amount of training courses online throughout the year, and you can literally sign up for any one of them. Most, if not all, are CPD accredited. And maybe to one of the questions on this forum, certainly for this hour and a half, we will arrange for CPD accreditation. If it's EXA, you've got to be aware that it's 0.15 because it's only an hour and a half. It's not a day long where you would normally get 1 point. And what we do broadly is industry events for networking. We are involved regionally and internationally, and to the point of today, various webinar series. Without further ado, I would like to now hand back to Krips, and I am more than happy. We are happy to be able to host this session, but we look forward to more of these as our infrastructure efforts and collaboration between industry and public sector unfolds in the most healthy manner possible. And I want to stipulate that definitely governance, corruption-free. Let's get the process going because our country needs the infrastructure to be developed so our economy can grow. And we don't have the poor minister having to make pronouncements on where we're going to be cutting budgets, etc., because we don't have a growing economy. So without further ado, thank you very much, Krips, and the rest of the speakers. I hope you all enjoy the session. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that, Chris. Thanks for the orientation. If I could just hand over now to Luanda Matlatla, please, if you can go ahead and share your presentation. And for colleagues that are coming in, I did say, let's keep our cameras off and let's keep ourselves on mute. Duration, please.
What happened, Jared? Well, I'm not too sure. We're having some technical difficulties today. I must apologize. I thought it was me that was having the technical.
Good morning, everyone. Yes, so my name is Luyanda Matlala. I will just be introducing the DBSA, its history, its mandate, as well as our focus areas. Are you able to see my presentation?
Yes, we are.
Okay, great. Okay, I just need to move this. Okay, so the DBSA operates throughout sub-Saharan Africa with a mandate to promote regional integration. In these markets, we provide project development, project finance, program implementation, and infrastructure delivery. Our product development includes participation in project feasibility, both in assessing as well as in financing. Our project finance is provided through various instruments, which I will speak to later. We are also involved in managing the design and construction of projects, which my colleague will speak to later. Our key clients tend to be municipalities, public-private partnerships, public entities, and more recently, we have more of a focus on building relationships within the private sector. This year, we celebrated our 40th birthday, and we've taken a moment to reflect on our growth, and that is from our involvement in creating 300 jobs in 1994 to 37,000 jobs in 2022. Today, we sit with a pipeline of more than 155 billion rand, and we've maintained a clean audit opinion since our inception. In implementing our mandate and driving for economic growth, we ensure that the projects that we are involved in are economically and environmentally sustainable. We see infrastructure as the development as a critical pillar for improving the lives of citizens in the region. One of our key initiatives, which we recently undertook, was the IPP office, where more than 6,000 megawatts of energy has been procured through investment of more than 20 billion rand. We support projects from an early stage feasibility to building and maintenance through funding and through other services. The services we offer are project preparation, the fund management, your program development, your program planning, and that is where we assist municipalities to develop sound infrastructure plans. We also are involved in climate financing, and that's where we would deploy funding for other climate financiers, and as well as then providing the building and maintenance services, which, as I've said, my colleague will speak to later. Our key sectors do include the water and sanitation, your transport and logistics, that's addressing your road, rail, as well as ports. We also then provide funding for projects in the energy, environment, and ICT sector. We are also funding the health, education, and housing sectors. Our financing products are to address the developmental aspects which we find to not be addressed by commercial financing. We do this through offering products which may be concessional either in tenor, pricing, or the risk appetite. So I've just listed some of the products that we do offer there, but we can speak through them in the question and answer session. Thank you very much. I'm happy to take questions at this point.
Thanks, Luanda. I think we're going to hold the questions towards the end, if that's fine with you, so that we have a very focused Q&A session later on. So thank you for presenting that. Can I move on to the next speaker, which is dealing with the infrastructure delivery component, Don Pitso. Don Pitso is an experienced business development specialist at the Development Bank of Southern Africa, and he has over 16 years experience across different industries, including construction, mining, ICT, manufacturing, and government services. He specializes in deal orientations, deal structuring, public-private partnerships, business development, and stakeholder management. I don't know if I've done justice, but that seems to be quite a heavy lot of experience that you've got there. And Don, if I can hand over to you, please, you can go ahead and do your presentation. Thank you.
No, thank you so much. Welcome, colleagues. And thank you to CESA for inviting the DBSA to this orientation session. And I'm hoping that the colleagues at the end of this session, they would be able to understand fully what we do. So I'll just take the colleagues through what we do within our infrastructure delivery division, and also the service that we provide and the journey that we've traveled so far, with some of also CESA members who have supported us through the years in making sure that we deliver projects. And also, I think the most important part, the procurement framework that we use on how can you as a CESA member get involved with the DBSA. And then lastly, I'll share my contacts, and then we can engage further. I think my colleague has already highlighted that, you know, the DBSA has a developmental mandate. I think the pictures that you see there are of the work that we've delivered so far. And it's great that most of this work, it has been delivered through assistance by CESA members. We've been supporting government, especially the National Department of Education, with the eradication of inappropriate school infrastructure. I think we've done a lot of work in eradicating mud schools, and we've also been supporting human settlements departments and also municipalities in eradicating poor housing infrastructure. I think it's mostly common. All of us, we are aware of squatter camps, so we've been working with municipalities. And also roads, we've also been doing a lot of work associated with roads. As you know, that roads are very critical towards ensuring that there's economic development. And I'm very excited that CESA members really have been very helpful in working with the DBSA in ensuring that we deliver high quality infrastructure. And also we've also been doing a lot of work around health, delivering clinics, hospitals, and also mega projects within the health sector. So the reason that we have this unit within the bank, I think my colleague has indicated, DBSA was traditionally a financing institution, but we've taken a position that there's a need to ensure that we provide end-to-end service in the value chain, and we now have established an infrastructure delivery division. It was established 10 years ago, and we've been responding to issues of capacity, capability, and also structural challenges that exist at different levels of government. And we've been augmenting capacity of the state to respond to issues of planning, special planning, budgeting, and also looking at innovation. And we really trying to drive innovation within the space. We're looking at driving the adoption of new technologies, especially also innovative building technologies. I think we've been very slow in adopting that as government, and we're trying to also drive that we also adopt innovative technologies. And I think everyone is aware that, you know, government has made a commitment to spend at least around almost $1 trillion in the next 3 years, but we're not feeling the impact on the ground, and we're working with government tirelessly to support them to deliver infrastructure. And I would urge, if there's any government entity or a representative from government who's attending, that we see on how we can support them to deliver infrastructure, especially where they quite aware that they don't have capacity to deliver the infrastructure. And also, you know, the issue of maintenance, it's one of the biggest challenge. We have a program where we're supporting also government departments in terms of putting together maintenance programs and also implementing maintenance projects. So as my colleagues has indicated, we provide end-to-end service in terms of our value chain. I'm within the build and maintain unit where we're responsible for managing projects from planning to delivery of the project, and also providing support in terms of doing maintenance. But in our quest, when we do these projects, we also try to make sure that we respond to developmental challenges. I think all of us, we are aware that projects are under siege almost everywhere in the country. We're all dealing with construction mafias, we're all dealing with business forums, and we also try to make sure that we address developmental objectives when we deliver projects. And I would urge also CESA members to also, take cognizance when they bid for projects to make sure that they make necessary provisions in making sure that they address also developmental challenges, because most projects have stalled as a result of not responding to these developmental challenges that all of us we finding ourselves with. So in terms of the services that we provide implementing agent services to mostly government departments and municipalities. I think we have around 30 clients, departments that we're supporting with the planning, design, construction, and upgrades and refurbishments of their infrastructure program. And the focus is mostly on refurbishments, upgrades, and minor repairs, including new construction. And we also do facilities management of several facilities, including the Union Building and many other facilities where we providing facilities management services. And we also provide program management services where we assisting client departments to set up their own program management office. And we're working also with some of the CESA members in terms of supporting this program management office support throughout different levels of government. They've assisted us in providing resources to those program management offices. And we also do revenue enhancement initiatives through other units. And also, I think also one thing that we also do for this client, it's also conditional assessments. And we've recently partnered with CESA to provide capacity building services where we do a program for members that are already working, which is called, which are mature members, where we assist them to register as professional engineers or technologists. And then the sectors that we focus on, as my colleague has indicated, we focus on the education sector, human settlements, health and infrastructure, and then water and sanitation, and also roads. In education, we mostly work with all the education departments. We want to grow our presence in the Western Cape. It's the only province that we're not working with. And then also human settlements, health, we're working also nationally. And then in terms of national state buildings, I think you've seen that we've taken over the refurbishments of Parliament. I think now we might end up getting a nickname for taking all the failed projects throughout the country. Yeah, so that's what we do. And then the journey that we've traveled so far to date, since the inception of the unit in 2013, we've delivered 30 billion rand of infrastructure. That's what we've spent, and we've created at least around 82,000 jobs during the construction of these projects, and 90% of this spend was supplied by BE suppliers, and 7,000 more or so SMMEs and subcontractors benefited. I think our collaboration is very critical when you look at the work that we've delivered so far, and I'm wishing that more members would take interest in supporting the DBSA, ensuring that we continue to deliver. So in terms of our pipeline for the next 3 years, we have a pipeline of around 60 billion. We're looking at spending 10 billion per annum infrastructure. And I think it also a huge shift change for us. And we need people who are ready to collaborate with us and help us take this work forward. So here is the GIS map of the projects that we've done throughout the country. I think most of the projects that we've delivered has been in the Eastern Cape, KwaZulu-Natal, and Limpopo, and now we're growing steadily in Free State, and also in Gauteng and Northwest. And we're looking at, extending our reach to the Western Cape. And I think here you'd see these are some of the clients that we've worked with. We're working with almost everyone within government, and we're also looking at extending our reach and working with municipalities. And we'd also appreciate, referrals from the members from the municipal space, because you also interact with municipalities to also refer them to us to see on how we can support them as an implementing agent to ensure that projects are delivered. Because if you look at the allocation of the funding for project, most of it's sitting at local level. And that's where we're really struggling to get traction in providing assistance to them. So these are just some of the projects that we've delivered. Some were delivered by CESA members. I think if they are here, they would maybe clap hands to themselves that, they've delivered some of these projects. And then in terms of the procurement process that we follow, the DBSA, it's required to comply with all the regulatory prescripts. So we're not really excused from not complying. So we comply with all the regulatory prescripts, as you're all aware of. And then we follow 2 procurement strategies, open tender and closed tender. So we have a panel of professional service providers and also of contractors that we use to procure services, and also some of the projects we go out on open tender. And I think for those that are interested in getting involved in some of the opportunities available, they can go to our website. It's www.dbsa.org, and then you could go to the procurement tab, and then you'll find opportunities that we have. That's where we advertise all our open tender projects, and also you could go to the government e-procurement system. That's where you could also get access to the opportunities. The closed tender opportunities are not advertised on this platform. And then for those that are looking at engaging further with our unit, you may reach me on the contact details provided on the slide, and then we can engage further and see on how we can help the DBSA bring smiles to our beneficiaries. Thank you, colleagues.
John, thanks for that presentation. I mean, obviously, we said it's an orientation, but you've put in a lot of information.
Takalani, please mute.
Yeah, please. Okay. Okay, I think, yeah, people are muted now. So I think thanks for that very informative presentation, Don, and there was a lot of information for us to orientate our members in such a short space of time. I would request if Luanda can come back onto the screen as well. And your presentation was quite rapid. I didn't realize that you're going to do it within the space of 7 minutes. So I want to start off firstly by just asking a few questions before we kick-start it and open the floor. And as I mentioned, we're going to take 5 questions with people raising their hands, and we're appealing to everyone to a maximum of 2 minutes per question. And then we're going to pause and get DBSA to respond. And then we're going to take 5 questions in the chat box if there's any. And my colleague, Godfrey Malisa, would help us to facilitate that process. But for me to kickstart, if you go to slide 7, Luanda, and if you look at our products, Now, as consulting engineers, we also look at, from an infrastructure point of view, if you have to look at that value chain, where would we get involved and what are the potential opportunities that are coming through? And if you look at things like your project preparation, which is on slide number 7, your fund management, your program development planning, climate change. And I think Don covered quite a bit of the items around build and maintenance. So if I could just ask you just to give us a little bit more context in that frame, because there's also specific sectors that you work with. If I could just pause there and maybe just get a bit more clarity on that from your side, Luanda. Thank you. Yeah, that's a slide.
Sure, Crips. So I've just put up the slide for easy reference. So I think to talk through how the CESA members or CESA can get involved, we have to look at the DBSA process as a whole. So what we would do, as Don has mentioned, is that we have almost a cradle to the grave type of approach, where we want to be involved in the planning of a project. We want to be involved in the implementation, but prior to that, the financing of it, as well as then the maintenance at the later stage. So the project preparation side requires a lot of research and putting together the feasibilities, which is often outsourced to engineers or to other service providers. So there's definitely an opportunity in the project preparation part for CESA members to be involved. Fund management tends to be a little bit more where we offer our role to those who are looking to implement funding into projects. So that tends to be a lot more focused on what the DBSA's core expertise is. When it comes to the program development, again, that is, that's a number of projects being developed to be implemented in a systematic way. So that won't necessarily speak to an individual opportunity, but again, it follows the same process where you've got a project preparation, you've got the project implementation, and often you will have a build and maintenance section to those programs. I think Don spoke quite extensively around the planning that we offer for municipalities. So he'll be able to speak to that further if required. And I'll speak to a little bit around the climate financing, where our purpose really is to mobilize funds that are focused on climate and environmentally friendly projects to then be able to be implemented both within the local and regional environment. And when I say regional, I mean throughout the continent. So from that perspective, we do again follow the same process where there is a project preparation per project. There would be feasibility studies. We would be involved in coming up with the concept notes, which again we use consultants for when the projects are being. So we would hold the financing to implement in the project, but when the projects are being implemented, we have due diligence processes where we would employ consultants. We also then have the monitoring of the projects post-financing, which also is an opportunity for consultants to be involved. I hope that answers your question.
It does, but I want to put you on the spot.
Yes.
If you talk about project preparation, fund management, from an infrastructure point of view, what is your budgets that you're chasing? And typically, over how many financial years are we talking about? And the reason I'm asking the question is because from a infrastructure point of view, it's always a challenge to understand what is the pipeline of opportunities for our members. And as you're aware, the government was citing that 5% of our GDP has to be spent on infrastructure projects. And at the moment, I think we're hovering just below around 2%, which is way below the threshold in terms of gearing up the economy. But just giving our members a sense of roughly what thresholds are you looking at in terms of budgets? I know I'm putting you on the spot, But if you can give us just approximate values, that will also help us to understand what that pot is, from your side. Thank you.
Yes, sure. So I think, with project preparation, it's always quite difficult to give a clear budget, particularly from the lower end, because it really depends on the size of the implementation of the project. I think most recently I was looking at a project where the project preparation required was 5 or 6 million rand, whereas the implementation side is over R1 billion. So, but we generally use the rule of thumb to say about 10% of the project implementation cost is what we would expect to be spent on the project preparation. On the upper end, it's a little bit easier to give guidance, where we've seen projects of more than 100 million at a project preparation stage. And for us, we generally try to be involved in the preparation post your pre-feasibility. And we generally expect that from pre-feasibility being completed to reaching financial close, we generally expect that we should be able to get through that process within 12 months. So we have a funding which really accommodates projects where they can reach financial close within 12 months. However, if they don't reach financial close within 12 months, we are still able to support them. But because we feel our risk is significantly increased at that point, our financing does tend to be significantly more expensive for the longer projects.
Okay. And just a question on if we got a member that's got a potential opportunity in terms of project preparation funding, what would be some of the requirements for them to bring to you and say, we've got a project, can we look at this opportunity being and DBSA assisting us through the project cycle? Is that an opportunity for our members moving forward?
Yes, definitely it is an opportunity. The projects we would generally prefer to be involved in is post pre-feasibility. So there is some level of confidence that financial close will be reached. And what we look for is projects where either the project sponsor or someone else is able to contribute at least 50% of the feasibility or project preparation funding. And also then we would want certain of the regulatory requirements to be in place. So a lot of the projects we generally see at the moment are around your renewable energies. So we would expect a PPA or a power purchase agreement to at least be at an advanced negotiation stage where there's a draft. Often we would expect to have some sort of offtake already in place. We would expect around the regulatory side, we would expect some engagement with the likes of Eskom in terms of having your cost estimate letter, or at least having applied for it. We would look at your EIAs and expect that it has been applied for already. So the studies have already been performed. I think that's just a quick guideline of what we would expect to be in place. I think maybe one other major one is around your property or access to property for the project to be implemented. So there must be at least a draft lease or some heads of agreement around access to that property, if not ownership being in place at that stage.
Okay. No, just one more question. If you go to your next slide, I found this to be a very interesting slide because I tried to look at this in conjunction with what Don was saying as well. And if you look at the areas in terms of financing and the areas that infrastructure delivery division is looking at, there's obviously, you mentioned energy, which you've covered, but if you look at transport and logistics, as an example on this slide, what type of work are you focusing there? Because I think on the water and sanitation, health, education, and housing, I think Don highlighted a few issues there. But just on the transport and logistics, because that's a huge factor at the moment in terms of the functionality of our country, and more importantly, the impact of that on our GDP. Can you just maybe give us a few snippets regarding how you're dealing with that before I open the floor and ask Godfrey to pick up the questions? Thank you.
Yes, sure. So I'm not particularly close to the transport and logistics sector, but I will give you a short overview from what I have seen. Our involvement really is, like I say over here, your road, rail, and ports. So we have relationships, particularly with Transnet, the Sunrails, as well as any projects that are being implemented on their behalf or with them as the off-takers. So, your private projects are projects we are able to fund. We are looking very much at the public-private partnerships around those sectors. And our transport and logistics also then extends to cover the oil and gas sector. So the transportation of oil or gas, whether it's through pipelines or through using physical vehicles, such as trucks and trains. That is another area that we're involved in there. I'm just trying to think where else our transport and logistics goes to, but I'm not as close to it, so very difficult to talk to it.
Luanda, thank you. Can I ask Godfrey if you can just pick up any of the questions or any hands up, please, Godfrey? Over to you.
Okay, thank you, Cripps. I think on the chat box, there's been questions regarding the CPD. And yes, the webinar will have 0.15 CPD points with EXA. We will share the details later. And the other question was about presentations. We will share with the attendees the presentations, including the recording, once we've uploaded them on the CESA website. And if I can just scroll down to see. Okay, the first question is about the PSP panel, and I think there's been like two of them. This first one is, when does the PSP panel expire? Let me scroll down. I think I saw another one with regard to the PSP. Okay, maybe let me just read them going down. So that's the first one. And then the second one is about projects in the DBSA. Are the projects that the DBSA is being involved in the agricultural, water sectors? If you can please provide a brief description. So opportunities in those two sectors. The other question is it possible to connect with the DBSA to help a client with project implementation, or is DBSA looking more to implement its own projects? So I don't know if we wanna answer those and then continue.
Okay, and let's just take one hand. I see there's one hand up.
Okay.
I'm not sure who it is, but if you've got your hand up, please go ahead and please keep it to a maximum of 2 minutes. Thank you.
Hi, thank you so much for the presentation. My name is Andrew Agbamuche. I'm actually calling in from Nigeria. I'm in Nigeria at the moment. So my question is, does DBSA finance or finance projects outside South Africa? That's one. And then secondly, I worked in South Africa some years ago before I came back to Nigeria. And then I was with Oracle. And then the thing there is, when I came back to Nigeria, I used some of DBSA products like the PSP electrical panels. We were specifying them on projects. And then when I came back to Nigeria, I wanted to also use the same products here in Nigeria, but I found it a bit challenging getting first the assistance from PSP in South Africa, and secondly also getting the specification down here in Nigeria. So what my question now is, do you see your products going beyond South Africa, like the rest of Africa, or do you have that future expansion strategy in place? Or thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you, Andrew. Okay, I think let's pause there. Andrew, if you could put your hand down, please, so that we can pick up anything else. So there's 4 questions in total for now. So the first one was dealing with the expiry date on the PSP panel. The second one was dealing with what projects are funded within the agriculture and water sector. And then the other comment that I picked up is DBSA assisting consultants. Yeah, that's what I wrote down. Unless you've got it down written better. And then the 4th point that I've got here, do you see your services and products being offered outside Southern Africa and I guess Sub-Saharan Africa, if the question from Andrew was correct? So those are the ones I captured. Please go ahead, gentlemen.
Thank you very much. Maybe I can start with the first question around. I'll actually, sorry, I noted the last question, but it was the one about finance outside South Africa. So I'll start with that. So yes, we do provide financing outside South Africa throughout the continent. I don't know of any projects in Nigeria at the moment, but it is something I can find out from our colleagues. I work within the SA environment only. And in terms of our ability to provide services outside of South Africa, I think maybe I'm going to ask Don to speak to that because I'm also not on the services side. And then the expiry date on the PSP, I think Don can also speak to that. When we speak about projects within agriculture and water, so DBSA is not specifically involved in the agricultural sector, but water is one of the sectors that we support. Often they are interlinked, so we would provide support on the water side. Most recently, we've launched our Water Partnerships Office, very similar to the IPP office, where we're looking to address major water infrastructure projects. And we've specifically raised funding to be able to do that. I think it's in the region of $200 million. But please don't quote me on that amount. It might be incorrect, but yes, we do have a very big focus on the water projects. We support the water boards as well. And then when it comes to the consultants requiring support for their projects. So I think from a providing consulting services to consultants, we don't quite do that, but if one wants to engage with us and see where a project is going, you will find friendly faces on the other side where we're able to speak about projects. Obviously, we wouldn't give away client information, but we would be able to engage on projects. Thanks, Don. I don't know if there's anything you can answer there.
No, thanks. I think maybe let me address the one of PSP. Our panel for PSPs, I think it expires 2025, but I'll send a formal communication in response to that to say when does it expires, and then you can share with the members. And then in terms of projects, yes, we do have projects that we're doing in the agriculture and the water sector. We have the National Department of Agriculture, and also I think in Limpopo as our client, we're supporting them with delivery of infrastructure related to agriculture. I think we're doing a bit of work there. And then the water service, yes, we do a lot of water-related projects. We're also supporting all the water boards in the country in terms of funding and also implementation support. I think some of the projects that have been in the media that we're doing is the Nandoni Dam in Limpopo, Letaba. I think we're also doing some work in the Oliphant's Neck, and also more recently in Tshwane, we're doing the refurbishment of a Rooival water treatment plant. Yes, and also we've done a lot of work with also other clients, municipalities, where we've built reservoirs and all that. And we also have a pipeline of projects coming within the sector, within the water service sector. I think if you could just check our tender portal in the next coming few months, we would be sharing some few projects that are coming. And I think the one that is more recent would be the one in Tshwane, the Rooival water treatment plant. And then there was a question around, are we assisting clients? It depends with what kind of a client. We have governance process in place just to make sure that the projects that we're taking on, we will not find ourselves in conflict with our mandate. As you know, that the mandate of the DBSA is to augment capacity of the state and also to do projects that have economic development impact. I think if the project from a private client has that, it meets that criteria, it's something maybe that we could look at. And then also in terms of support to PSPs that we're working with, we have a funding product that it's aimed at supporting our PSPs and contractors to ensure that they deliver projects, and they need to apply for that funding instrument, and it's only used purely for DBSA project. You can't use it for anything else. So if we support you, it means we are enabling you to complete the projects that we've allocated to you. And then, yeah, I think, are we looking at growing within other markets? Currently, our focus is SADC region. So in terms of our mandate, we're looking at SADC, but I think when the conditions allow, we might be able to look at Nigeria, but only in terms of our core focus sectors, which is water, health, education, and transport and energy. Yeah, no, thank you.
Thanks, Don. Just one question I've got while you were talking. If you have to look at those sectors, have you got an indication of potentially what the value of work would be coming out? Obviously, you haven't got the detail in terms of the exact projects, but if you look at the water sector, you're talking about implementing another 3 billion rand worth of capital cost over the next couple of years. Just to get a sense in terms of the sectors, please.
I think from our unit, in terms of the pipeline, when you look at water, I think we have around 30 or 40 billion rand projects in the pipeline. That needs to start as soon as, like yesterday, that most of the project would be starting, some this year, some would be starting next year. And some of them are multi-year projects. So it also has to do with issues of funding. Some of these government departments are constrained. So we're looking also at funding some of those projects. And I think when we look at roads, there's a good pipeline of around 10 billion in the next 3 years. And then housing, I think we're looking at around 3 billion. And education, we're looking at around 10 billion or so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks for that, Don. I'm going to hand over back now to Godfrey. If you want to pick up any other questions on the chat box for us, please, Godfrey.
Thank you, Cripps. I think the first one again is on the PSPs. I think it's not surprising since majority of the attendees are professional services providers, consulting engineers. How does the DBSA make sure that the PSPs in the projects in a particular province are involved Okay, maybe localization per province. Don, maybe that's your question. And then the contact details, I think, Don, you've already shared yours. Luyanda, I don't know if you can just maybe drop your email address on the chat box. The next question is, are there successful infrastructure projects that have been implemented through triple Ps? There is one question. The presentations, we've already dealt with that. We will share with everyone. Done. Okay. Next question, will DBSA be able to partner with private sector to fund infrastructure projects? Maybe a follow-up on what we've already tackled. And then this one is to Pitwe. Thank you for the presentation. The procurement system is very slow and frustrating. And I think they've had some examples here. And the expiry dates are put here. So the question is, there is also clarity with regard to evaluation criteria. So maybe if, Don, you want to touch a bit on the evaluation criteria, the frustration of things being a bit slow. And then the next one, we are a property development company in the Northern Cape, and they have 350 million for social housing. And the question is about funding. Okay. How do they apply? Must they apply as the PSP, or maybe they must do it together with the municipality? Okay. And the last one for now, again, is PSP. Will you be able to share a procurement plan for PSPs for the next financial year? It's a follow-up. I think part of the question has been answered, but if Don would like to add more, you're welcome to do so. Thank you, Cripps.
Thanks, Godfrey. Gentlemen, I counted 78 questions there. Okay, who wants to kickstart? I think the first one was dealing with PSP localization. Yeah, the contact details is not a question. I think it's more sharing that information, so that's fine. Have DBSA implemented PPP projects? I think, Luanda, that would be for you. Will DBSA partner with private sector was the other one. The evaluation criteria for PSPs, and the other question that I picked up was Western Cape government got a budget. You know, how you're supporting them. Sorry, I'll leave that to you now. You can take it forward.
Thank you, Chris. So the question around successful projects by through PPPs, we definitely have implemented triple P projects successfully. The biggest one and really our flagship is the IPP office. As I mentioned in the presentation, there are about 20 billion rand worth of projects that have been implemented so far, and that will continue to grow through the next rounds of the IPP program. Then I think there was a question around our ability to fund private sector. Yes, we do fund private sector to implement public projects. So as long as the offtake is there, it is something we can fund. And we do even fund private sector to implement private sector projects. So particularly now you're having all of these commercial and industrial off-takers for your IPP project. So your developer is a private individual and the off-taker is private as well. Obviously, there's some licensing requirements in between, but we are able to fund those projects. And then out of those 78, which other questions did I think there? Well, there was a question around the limitation of our funding. On our side, we I think our natural limitation is around 1.5 billion rand, and that's our portion of the funding, not necessarily the project size. But that is something that, you know, if the project requires more funding, we are able to negotiate or at least request from our board where we feel that the strategic nature is so important that we'd like to exceed those limits. But yeah, a project with 1.5 billion rand is within our limits. Then there was a question around a development by a private company where there's not sufficient electricity. So that one is mixed in that we are able to fund a project like that, where it is a service that the municipality should normally have offered. But as long as there is an agreement with the municipality that they will take it over at a point in time, or however the remuneration for the private entity doing the municipality's job is, we are able to fund either the private entity or the municipality directly. Yeah, so it is definitely something we can look at. Thanks.
Thank you, Don. Over to you.
No, thanks. There was a question around localization of PSPs. I think we guided by our clients on how they want to do the procurement strategy. So yes, we do localization, and there are clients who insist that the PSP must be from their respective province or locality. But we have clients that are not forcing us to say, this is how you need to procure. So that depends on the client. So even when we implement projects, we are guided by our clients to say, how do they want their procurement strategy? Yes, we do promote locality. And I think what we're trying to also do, you know, when you get to some of the provinces, you find there's only 1 or 2 grade 9s. And the project requires a grade 9, and the case is that you'll always find Gauteng PSPs winning these opportunities. So that's the challenge that we continuously deal with. And then there was also a question around, do we charge any fees? Yes, we do charge fees. That is very competitive. That is between 6 to 9%, but you know, we look at case by case. There are other clients that are in very dire need where the DBSA would just subsidize the rate, so then we can just ensure that there's delivery of services, especially around water and sanitation. And then there was also a question around frustration that the procurement process is taking time. Part of the reason that you'll find that the procurement process takes time is that at times, you know, we're waiting for confirmation from clients to confirm if they have budgets. And some of these clients, they just go quiet on us and act as if it's like they don't know that we're running a procurement process for them. And it has proven one of our biggest challenge, because it ends up delaying projects, and 1 year later we've not appointed, we cancel the tender, we go out on tender, and then when we go out on tender, people, they don't respond because they say, what's the point? We responded to this tender and there was no response. So most of the challenges that we experience are coming more from the client side, or the client says they want to get involved in the procurement processes and then they are forever not available. Then we cannot evaluate the tender. And then around the question of experienced professionals that have retired, that they are frustrated that DBSA is not working with them closely. I think it also depends on how the clients want us to run the procurement processes. And I understand the position where they're coming from. If you look at the recent tender that we just ran for Sandra, it was evaluated by our most experienced professionals in the country. We invited them to say, here's a tender that needs to be evaluated. And I think it was around 20 professionals. They came through, they assisted the DBSA, and they evaluated the contract. So it also depends on the clients, because we can't really force that clients, because at the end of the day, they can just withdraw at any point. So we try also to be sensitive in the process, but we also work with retired professionals. And then there was also a question around procurement plan. I'll check with our supply chain management if they could share the plan, and then if possible, I'll share it with CESA, and then CESA can then share it with the colleagues. I've noted also a question on the panel where you're asking around how is the process done. So people who are on the panel, they still bid even though they are in the panel. So when they bid on the panel, you're asking, are they bidding among themselves? Yes, they're bidding among themselves, but there's also a rotation that is being used. If someone has already received a huge portion of work, we try to make sure that everyone gets an opportunity. So the rotation would exclude those that have already received a lot of work. So then we try to balance to make sure that others also get an opportunity. Are we awarding work on 80-20, 90-10? I think that depends on the client, on their preferred procurement strategy, but would recommend to them a strategy that would be feasible based on the project. And we don't often appoint on the lowest cost procurement model, given that you'll end up having a problem. So we'll always try to motivate why we should not appoint the lowest supplier, because maybe they undercutting cost, and 2 months down the line, they'll come back and say they can't afford to complete the project. So we try to make sure that we appoint the right contractor or the right PSP. And then does the DBSA require panel member to subconsult? I think it also depends on the size of the project and also the dynamics in that specific environment. There are environments where client departments would require you to say, we require you to subcontract. And I think one of the benefits to also make it worthwhile for our PSP, we try to cluster projects, so then at least, it becomes meaningful for them also, that they have something that is meaningful and that it's of large scale also. So that's how we try to also manage the issue where now the client requires you to subconsult. We have projects that are very big that you'd find it's a multi-billion rand project where a client would say, I need you to subconsult. And I think it makes sense also for you to subconsult on those projects to also address the developmental goals that all of us needs to also respond to, and also to manage some of the social challenges of business forums, construction mafias and all that. I'm not sure if we've responded to all the questions, but post this, I'm available to make sure that we can address any of your concerns that you might have.
Well, thank you for that. Let's take another 5 minutes and see, Godfrey, if there's any other questions coming through. Anyone that wants to raise their hands to direct a question?
Yes, Crips, I think let's encourage others, if they have questions, to raise their hand and present it. I think from my side, Dawn has actually gone through some of the questions. There was a question about the backlog, or please indication on the amount of backlog in terms of your vision. It wasn't quite clear, but maybe Luyanda and Dawn have some remarks. The limitation was answered. Opportunities for CESA members, it's available, that was answered. And there was this question, I think it's from someone from Tabachwe local municipality, saying that one of the applications was declined, but there are a lot of, or some municipalities that are interested in working with DBSA. Maybe Don Luyanda, you can expand a bit on how you work with municipalities, or if there are also resubmission, something like that. I think those are the last ones that I could see.
Okay, thanks, Godfrey.
And Notlantla has just put up his or her hand,
Okay.
their hand.
Yes, good morning, everyone. I don't know if I can ask this question, it's probably playing devil's advocate, but with regards to DBSA projects, more often than not, obviously, as construction projects go, they go over the stipulated contract period. And with the tender processes, obviously, and the provisions of the contract when we tender, obviously, once the project has gone over the stipulated or period, then we found ourselves working at a negative, as it were, in regards to completing the project. So I just wanted to understand if DBSA has any plans in terms of assisting the PSPs to also what's the word, not end up funding DBSA projects just because they've gone beyond the stipulated contract period. I think that's been a frustration for a lot of us, that as much as, I mean, we've got a 3-month project that ends up taking 12 years because of, various issues during the course of the project, and there's just no provision for the PSPs after that fact. So we just end up eating into our fees. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, John and Rwanda, I think over to you guys.
Thanks. I think Nontlanhla's question, it's a more contractual issue. And, I think PSPs also need to make sure that they manage the contracts with the DBSA, that it's not working against them. And I think, if you realize that this contract, it's not favorable, it's something that you need to really address with the project manager that you're working with. Because you've already signed the agreement, and I understand your frustration. It's also frustrating, but I think maybe it's something I'll share it with the team, that it's something that they need to look at, and I think maybe we might need to have a more technical related session where we're addressing all the technical issues that you're experiencing in terms of supporting the DBSA with the delivery of the projects. And then we can then start developing a recourse mechanism just to make sure that these issues are not repeated. Because I believe if you're experiencing such, it's not only you, also other PSPs are experiencing similar challenge. So I think I'll share this feedback with the colleagues, and then we can look at how do we then solution around this.
Thank you.
Great. Okay, I think there was 2 other questions, Godfrey, that was posed.
Also, I see, yes, the question from Tabachewu. I think when they made an application, there's probably a criteria that one needs to meet. And I think there are reasons why they were not approved, something that I cannot address. I think maybe it's something that they'll need to raise with our local government team just to understand why they've not received the approval. How can they work on the process to receive approval? I'm happy to engage with the colleague further. I've left my email, you can drop me, and then I can maybe look at setting up a meeting with the team at local government, and then we can see how do they get the response and the support to make sure that when they make their next application, we'll be able to support them. The other municipalities that are interested to work with the DBSA, I've put my email on the chat. They can send me an email, and then I can refer them to the relevant individuals within the bank if I'm not able to assist. Yeah, I think those are the questions that just came through. And then, yeah, I think some of this question we've already responded to them.
So I just want to make a point as well. I mean, a lot of the projects that DBSA and the infrastructure delivery team implement, they follow the IDMS process, which government has put in place for public funding, which is the infrastructure delivery management system. And when they secure work through those specific clients, they're going to produce an implementation plan, which basically governs them in terms of how they implement projects and what approval processes they would have to go through. And then also, more importantly, some of the reasons why the procurement is so robust as well is when the Auditor General is actually auditing a specific department, they tend to also audit some of the processes, for example, DBSA and other clients put in place. So I think it's important for us to understand that flow as well when we do get appointed. So we understand from a third party perspective what the client or DBSA in this case is facing as well. Okay. So I think let's pause there. And I want to ask John and Luanda if you've got any questions that you want to pose to people on this call, because obviously this is an orientation, and so I just want to get a view from you, regarding anything that you require, or any questions that you want to pose to us.
Maybe just a comment from my side. I think my space is quite specifically the energy, environment and ICT space, where the bulk of our transactions would be your energy generation or energy transmission, infrastructure development. So I would like to know the involvement of, if any of the members are involved in the early stage development of those types of infrastructure projects, and really how they support your developers. Thank you.
So just to elaborate, so you talk about energy, are you talking about renewable energy, or are you talking about conventional energy? And if you talk about ICT, are you talking about what type of infrastructure on ICT? Is it data centers, etc.? Sorry, so we can get a bit more clarity for a response on that.
Sure. So from the energy side, although it's not specifically renewable energy is the bulk of it. So your solar and wind generation is at the moment, we really are not seeing much in the hydro side, but we are also looking at your gas energy generation. So yeah, so it is quite wide. We're looking at the repurposing of some of the Eskom power stations and seeing how we can move away from coal there. So whilst we're not focused, or we're not limited to renewables, they tend to be the focus because sustainability is a huge factor for us. When it comes to ICT, it is ICT infrastructure, which then speaks to your telecommunications infrastructure. So your communications towers, your fiber, as well as extending to the data centers, as you've mentioned. We also look at digital or software infrastructure. So currently we're looking at your digital security. We're also looking at your payment platforms. So it is quite varied, and I think it's a changing environment. What we thought was infrastructure 20 years ago is no longer the same.
John, do you want to pose the question before we open it up and get Godfrey to coordinate something for us?
Well, for me, it's not a question, but I think it's very clear that we need to build a platform of engagement between CESA and the DBSA. And I would like to see us creating a platform that allows CESA members to see what's coming within the infrastructure delivery division, and also preparing themselves. And I think also key addressing some of the challenges that CESA members experience. So then, we also improve as we go along. That we build a process of improving some of the challenges that PSPs experience, and then we can share the know-how and improve the systems within the DBSA, just to ensure that we improve the delivery of infrastructure. I know that my colleagues are always complaining about PSPs leaving the projects at closeout, that when we reach closeout stage, because there's very little money left, PSPs always abandon projects. They are nowhere to be found. And I think it's very important that we find common ground. And I think also, you know, part of the reason some of the PSPs would complain that they're not getting opportunities, it could be some of these things that they've abandoned a project and it has been noted and they've not been made aware that, you know, you've since left this project, you've never came back to fully close it. That's why we're no longer interested working with you. And I think in the engagements that we've had with CESA was that we need to also report some of these members that are not complying with the professional and ethics code of CESA, just to make sure that, you know, we build this open relationship between ourselves and CESA. So I think maybe we need to really strengthen this part of our partnership to have this open relationship that, you know, when we issue our procurement plans, you receive those in time earlier when those documents are ready, that members get to see them. So I think let's just work on an approach that we could use just to share all those information when it's readily available. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Okay, I think maybe with a show of hands, can people indicate their involvement in the energy and ICT sector? So just put your hand or put a thumbs up or your hand up so that we could just get an indication of participants on this call. Okay, we got about 6 at the moment, or 7. Okay. Okay, thank you for that. John, just coming back to your question, I mean, one of the biggest challenges that we have as an industry, and a consulting industry, you know, we always put under pressure to start developing skills and start developing our companies accordingly. But there's 2 key factors that contribute to us from a growth point of view. The first one is the price sensitivity in terms of how tenders are given out. And throughout the world, they tend to go through a 2-envelope system, in the sense that if you meet the requirements technically, then obviously price is evaluated secondly. Our procurement in the country tends to favor quite a bit, from a professional point of view, the price component. Okay. So the challenge we have is, and the challenge you're having, is that you might have appointed a PSP, but they can't complete the work because financially they can't deal with it.
Just for me to be told.
And can we maybe just like, sorry, Takalani, can you mute your, okay, here we go. So I think as part of the stakeholder engagement moving forward, I think that's one of the things that we go revisit, right? And this has a ripple effect because, you know, we can't really employ people if we don't know what the pipeline of opportunities are. And previously I worked for a company that knew what the pipeline of opportunities were. And more importantly, they could position themselves in terms of employing graduate engineers, understanding the cost models that we're contributing to them to do the project, etc., or the commercial arrangements. And we need to start maybe looking at that, because in South Africa, we've got the tendency of not being proactive, but a lastminute.com, where we appoint people and they need to do it in such a short space of time, and therefore it affects them in terms of building capacity within the industry moving forward. One of our biggest challenges now is the loss of knowledge, the drain we got in terms of people leaving the country. And we need to maintain and retain that moving forward. And I think CESA and other built environment institutions, you know, can assist you and work in partnership with you to start growing that and building that as well, please. Just an appeal from our side. Okay. So we've got another 4 minutes. I would like to maybe stop there with the questions and answers and go into closing remarks. Yeah, firstly, I think DBSA, thank you for making your time available. I know that we did indicate this is an orientation process that we're going through, just to get to an understanding of where and what you're doing, and to share that with our members. I think from a CESA point of view, this has been fairly helpful for us to show our members as well that we have got entry points into certain key clients, but more importantly is that we need to keep the entry point open moving forward. And maybe a suggestion, as you mentioned, is we can engage with CESA to set up a stakeholder engagement committee in order to deal with CESA members and use that as a basis to engage with DBSA on any issues that they may raise. Okay. I think secondly, I would like to thank all of the participants. We had about 250 confirming, and we see we got now at 142, or roughly in that region, attending this orientation. And then I think from our side, I would like to extend a thank you to Godfrey Ramalisa for setting this up as a stakeholder manager within CESA. Thank you for your participation, and Chris for your guidance in terms of that. And being part of the advocacy committee, I think one of the key things that we're trying to do is create more of these orientation processes and engagements with clients moving forward. And we're hoping into the future we'll be able to give you a bit more time to set up these, so that necessary participation is acknowledged in advance from a proactive point of view. But more importantly is, as CESA, we also want to contribute and make a difference in this country. We talk about being stronger together, and I think what the Springboks did over the weekend is a good indication of how we can, as the built environment industry, get together and contribute into that facet moving forward. We look forward to DBSA doing a much more detailed presentation at the CESA conference next year in Cape Town, ICC, which is happening between the 19th and 20th of March. And we're hoping at that conference as well, we'll get more members to participate and engage with you on some key issues. And once again, thank you from our side for your participation. I would like to pause there and close this orientation session with CESA and DBSA. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, bye.
Sorry.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.